you live to City Hall. The mayor speaking ahead of a very busy council meeting. Let's listen in.
My dad, in the most difficult times, he had hope because he had an apartment. In the 70s, he was psychotic. He went into the hospital, got shock treatment, came back out. He had a roof over his head. Later on, when it was difficult life because everybody had moved out, it was lonely, he was having trouble, but still, he had a roof over his head. Later on, even further, he had dementia, and he was trying to cope. But he didn't become homeless because he had an affordable apartment that he called home. That is not the case for thousands and thousands of people, whether they're seniors, whether they have some mental health issues, or they have some disability, or young families having 2 jobs. They just can't afford to grow their family because the rent is so high. And people are constantly living in a state of fear and insecurity because of evictions and high rents and lack of affordable housing. On City Council agenda, there is an item called Advancing the Transformation of Toronto's Housing Delivery. We know that housing gives people hope for the future, hope to build a family, hope as a senior can then stay there and not worried about being evicted throughout the rest of her life or his life. Affordable housing is fundamental because it gives people hope. And for far too long, the city have not built affordable housing, but we've done it before, and we're doing it again. On the council agenda, there are 5 sites that the city, as a developer, we as a public builder, we are building 770 units of affordable rent geared to income, rent controlled housing. Not only is the shovel going to get into the ground, but in a year's time, people would be moving in, end of 2025. And these people will find hope. They will find a stable, secure home. Now, some on council said that, well, public servants, public builders always mismanaged everything, whether it's St. Lawrence Market or the Gardner, anything that public ties that our civil servants are into building, it's always mismanaged. Well, I have more faith in our public servant than that. Look at what they did when we had a big flood last Wednesday. Our public servants were out in rescuing people in their cars and elevators, pumping out water from Union Station, cleaning up the debris so the highways can open. I have faith in our public servants. The second item I want to highlight for today is my motion reducing runoff for mitigating flooding. Speaking about flooding, yesterday it happened much smaller, but still. Stormwater runs off paved surfaces and it enters our sewers and it combines and it just overwhelmed the system. Right now, the city is working to address this impact. We are spending over the next 10 years $4.3 billion in the wet weather flow master plan that was approved. And there are many, many projects around the city to help with stormwater. However, my motion is looking to support homeowners, looking for incentives, and looking at ways the city can support homeowners to help them so that the basement would not flood. And there are many different ways to mitigate the impact of the storms and heavy rain. And we will evaluate success of the past programs or present programs, such as the getting incentives to paying 80% to install sump pumps, backwater flow, etc. There are different ways to do it, and maybe even bringing back the rain barrel. Will help homeowners and business to avoid costly floods and find ways and help homeowners to create permeable surfaces where water can go into the ground instead of run off into pavement and flood basement and overwhelm our sewer system. So we do know that climate change will make flooding more frequent, and fire and heat, and more challenging. We have to act to mitigate the impact of stormwater, and that means better stormwater infrastructure and more permeable surfaces. No doubt you have some questions.
On that note, your motion is asking staff to assess and to look at what exists already and the possibilities of. Surely you must have an idea of where you want this to end up. What do you think in the end that you want to happen?
There's consultation going on right now for big commercial ICI sectors, and there's already a plan, and we're consulting. Would it make sense if we provide incentive? What kind of incentive? Is it 50%? Or is it 80% that we help support? In big parking lots, if they put permeable surfaces, interlocking bricks, for example, then the water can then drain through. So it's not a parking lake, it's a parking lot, right? So how much would it cost for them, and what percentage would we support, okay? And if they don't do that, how much do they need to pay the city? Because we need to then build bigger pipes to carry all the stormwater out, okay? So how much should they pay if they don't do what needs to be done to have the ground to absorb? So the percentage and payment, what is it? How is it? How do we do it? Because we do know that this wet weather projects with many pipes and tunnels and all of that is $4.3 billion over 10 years. And if we load it all into just our water rate, that's high. That's a problem, right? So where do we find the funding? How do we do it?
Okay, listening in, sorry, Jen, to cut you off there. Mayor Olivia Chow, just speaking ahead of this very busy city council meeting, talking about a couple of issues that will be coming up. Housing, that's a very big issue for the mayor, wants to prioritize more affordable housing in the city. Also talking about a motion she's bringing forward to mitigate the flooding. I mean, this has been a big story. We saw historic flooding in the city last week as a result of quite a bit of rain in a very short period of time. Also, even yesterday, you know, some of the rain that moved through affecting people and homeowners. So that's something we'll be watching for, and obviously something that affects a lot of residents.
Yeah, she talked about potentially bringing back the rain barrel and investing, I think she said $4 billion over 10 years to prevent, you know, when we have storms and massive floods. So
yeah, long-term planning.
We'll pay close attention to that.